an emotional trigger bomb, again, just so we're aware, is something that's a trap. It's designed to create a huge emotional response out of people. So the first one is criticism and rejection. So, guys, criticism and rejection is everywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be there consistently. So, one of the things with trigger bombs that people have to understand, especially when you're coming with criticism and rejection, you have to make sure that you understand it's going to be there. So if you don't know how to cope with it, if you don't understand it, or you don't understand what to do when it happens, you're going to have huge emotional responses to criticism and rejection. For most part, criticism and rejection can make you feel inadequate, can give you self-doubt, and make you even feel shame. Guilt, shame is a huge environment for how people stop talking about their opinions and their feelings and don't express their emotions. Especially in the child environment, this is where you talk about bullying. So again, one of the coping mechanisms that I help people with so that they can make their decisions when they're dealing with criticism or rejection, I mentioned it earlier before, where if somebody is criticizing you and they're not giving you an alternative solution, a positive alternative solution is what I really should have said. If they're not giving you a positive alternative solution, if they're just being critical, then you need to be upfront with them and say, you're just being critical, and I have no interest in being involved in a relationship where we're just critical of each other. So the fear of failure is another trigger bomb. A lot of times people will have the fear of failure that will be in them, and it will stop them making decisions over a very long period of time. They will find any way possible, even making the most safe bets possible, so that they do not fail. They'll always play it safe. They'll always play it safe. And so anytime that they have to take a risk, that is a trigger bomb. Whenever it's not for sure, it's a trigger bomb for them. They will have a very strong emotional response. So, how I help people deal with the fear of failure when it's become a trigger bomb, when you all of a sudden have this huge emotional response, is you have to explain to them that you only fail. So, if somebody were talking to me, I would be saying to them, you only fail when you don't give up. As long as you're alive and you're breathing, then you haven't failed anything. Failure is a huge lie. You fail when you give up, when you stop living. So the next trigger bomb is injustice and unfairness. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair that this isn't happening. This person that is doing all types of bad things is getting everything that they want. There's injustice on that side of the world, that things that have been done to me are unfair. That is a part of life. So when you are dealing with a trigger bomb of injustice and unfairness, you have to be very clear with yourself in your own line of thinking. Injustice is a part of the world, and you have to learn how to cope with that. So how do you cope with that? By serving and doing the very best that you can to be the most just and fair person that you can. Operating outside of self-interest is how you deal with this trigger bomb. So loneliness is the next one, and isolation. So that means putting yourself in situations where you're not going to be lonely. You're going to be around people and having to approach this trigger. When you find, and this is more of a trigger bomb in general, where people will avoid hanging out with other people. Put yourself in situations where you're going to hang out with other people, and don't just be around them. Be vulnerable around them. Introduce, if you had a fear of change, you need to start dealing with that in small bits. You need to start actually doing things that change up your environment in little small bits. It doesn't have to be a huge bit. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, just a little small, tiny bits. But guys, these are your major trigger bombs that you're going to see. Emotional trigger bombs are one of those things where it's really a trap. Your brain creates a trap where you're going to go into automatic thinking and you're going to start saying, oh my gosh, this is going to be the result. It creates anxiety, it creates stress and mood swings and so forth and so on. So instead of dealing with things that way, I really learned how to cope with different things that had to, or teach other people how to cope with different things that are trigger bombs. They're just huge bombs like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be lonely for forever, or this is injustice and I can't believe this is happening. I'm going to fix this right now. I've seen people deal with stuff like this all the time, and it stops your decision making. If you do not deal with it, it will stop your decision making in its tracks. So identify your trigger bomb